Welcome to episode 1 of the Top podcast. So, what does TOP stand for? TOP. TOP stands for, or TOP stands for, teaching over preaching. The purpose of this podcast is to educate. I want this podcast to be a resource for people to expand their knowledge. There is this idea of, hey, this is what everybody should know. But unfortunately, maybe we weren't in a situation to learn these things. We didn't have that peer group growing up. Or maybe we didn't really get a chance to care about it until now. That's what this podcast is for. In episode 1, I actually interview a dear friend of mine. Her name is Adina Perullo. Her story, her battle, her war, her fight, super inspirational. Her mindset about this is impeccable. Knowing her has made me a better person. It's given me a new perspective, and I think it's given me a lot of growth. Check out episode 1. So, Adina, it is very good to see you.
It's great to see you, Matt.
How has everything been? So tell me what's been going on.
Everything's been a bit of a roller coaster. When we first met, we actually, I think we talked online first, and we had never met before, but you had posted something, and I felt such a connection to want to reach out to you and let you know that, there's this big community out there of people who have your back. So that one concept right there has gotten me through some of the ups and downs that have been going on lately. Lately, we kind of were on a really high and dropped a little bit down. I guess I would love to say everything's great. How are you? But that's just not the reality of stage 4 metastatic breast cancer.
Tell me more about what you're going through right now, and tell me how this came to be. Like, tell me how this started.
Sure. So, I just turned 39 this past weekend, and it was this time of year, actually, yesterday, June 5th. Um, June 5th was the date that I was diagnosed with early stage breast cancer. I was actually with the Baratini crew. I was at one of the old offices. I was picking up a card box to loan to a bride, and I was getting some notes. It was, the beginning of peak wedding season. So I was busier than ever with my wedding planning business, A Perfect Day. Um, and I was joking with some of the people here that I had just gotten pulled over, and that was the worst thing that could possibly happen to me. Oh, by the way, I'm on my way for my first mammogram, so let's hope that goes well. I barely made it to the appointment because of the traffic from Suffolk County into Nassau County in Long Island. And when I got there, it seemed normal. I had found a lump 2 weeks prior in my left breast, and 34 years old. Never really thought it would be anything, but just wanted to be smart about things. I went in for the first set of pictures on my very first mammogram, and they called me back for a second set, and then a third set, and then they sent me for a mammogram, and then they told me to get dressed but not to leave because the radiologist needed to speak to me right away. At that moment, I knew that getting pulled over earlier in the day was not even close to the worst thing that could ever happen to me that day. I was alone. I didn't bring anyone with me to this appointment because I expected nothing to come out of it. And I left that appointment in a complete fog, knowing in my heart and in my gut that I was just about to be diagnosed with breast cancer at 34 years old.
Now, you didn't feel any symptoms. You didn't have any. What's this, a normal checkup?
Yeah, I mean, I'm the one who initiated this mammogram and sonogram. I hadn't gotten one in a couple of years. I've always had dense breasts. So, women out there who um, are afraid to go get mammograms or afraid to feel around or afraid to mention things to your doctor, if you have cysts in your breasts and you feel them, that puts you at a much higher risk of having breast cancer. And if you do go for screenings, you must go for a mammogram and a sonogram both, because mammograms don't pick up cancerous tissue as well as sonograms do because it looks eerily similar to dense breast tissue. So I knew that I was at higher risk because of just the way that my body was made. But this lump felt different, and I can't even explain it. It's not even like a physical thing. It's almost like a metaphysical feeling that I had in my gut. Every time I would feel the lump, I would get this like gut punch that would say to me, you need to get this checked out. So, yeah, I mentioned it to my doctor on a Saturday morning, and by Wednesday, I was getting the mammogram and sonogram. Um, it was supposed to be routine. It was supposed to be, yep, you're fine, another cyst, see you in a year. and it was anything but that.
When you're hearing this news, do you get? I can only imagine what you're feeling, but is it fear? Is it? Did you expect to hear this? Was it a complete surprise? Was because you had said that you were like, hey, let me go get a mammogram. Did you feel something was up? Did you do it for precaution? Did you just have a gut feeling? Did you? What made you make that decision? And then all of a sudden you found something. It was one of those things where I've had that before, where not that I didn't have breast cancer, but I was like, I need to go to the doctor. It doesn't feel right.
Hmm.
It doesn't feel like a horrible symptom. However, I want to go just to see. And then you find out that there's something actually wrong.
Yeah. So, I mean, aside from finding the lump, I had no symptoms whatsoever. And that's the scary thing about breast cancer is that you could be literally any age and you can have it and you can be completely asymptomatic. You could not feel a lump. You could feel a lump. Um, I had always had a bit of health anxiety. I was always that person who would have a headache and go, it's a brain tumor. So for me to feel a lump in my breast, automatically, just because of the anxieties that I had as a person, I said, oh my God, it's breast cancer. Did I actually in my heart think that it was? No. So when I left that appointment, um, being told that I cannot wait on a biopsy, that it was extremely important that I got in as quickly as possible, it was almost like when you watch a movie and they take it, and I mean, you know this better than anyone. In a cinematic fashion, you slow down, that dramatic moment where that person is walking out the door and everything feels like you're walking through molasses, and you can't really make out what things look like. It's just a blur. That's what it was walking to my car. And I took a couple of deep breaths and I thought, this is the end of the life that I've known and the start of a new life. That's really scary. And the first thing I did was call and schedule that biopsy, because I knew that although it was important for me to have support, it was more important for me to do what I had to do to stay well. Made that appointment, and then I called my husband and I said, I know you're at work, and he's a police officer. He has a dangerous job. So to call him at work with such horrible news is not a good decision. But I said, I need you to speak to your boss and I need you to leave. I need you to come home because I think that I have breast cancer. Um, and I called my mom and said, just meet me at my house. And by the time I got to my house, my primary care physician had called me because she had seen the slides. And she told me to get ready because she did not like how it looked.
When you're telling your husband this, you don't need to tell me specifics, but how is your husband processing it? Because at the end of the day, that is your first sickness and health person. That is your, I feel like that's got to be like the main person in your life at the time.
Yeah.
Um, like how is he processing it? How did your mom process it? How hard was it, or what was it like telling them?
Um, Saying it out loud was awful because that made it more real than anything. Um, but my husband is a very stoic individual. I feel like being in the line of work that he's in, he sees horrible things every day. He gets called to everybody's worst day of their lives. So he's seen things that I can't even fathom. Um, so he's the guy who is able to put on a brave face and go numb. And that's kind of what he did over the phone. He said, um, okay, we have no proof. Let's go by the facts. The facts are that it doesn't look great, but you have nothing to go by other than that. Um, my mom, she was more put together than I expected. And I think this is because living in Long Island, especially in the areas surrounding the old Grumman area where they had the planes were being built for the army, there's a whole history of how toxic water was put into the ground and not reported. And I mean, there's so much more to that is a story for another day. But a lot of young women around my age, friends of hers, daughters, were getting over breast cancer treatment. And she had been by their side and she had seen that when you catch breast cancer early, in most cases, you have a two out of three chance of it not coming back. So in most cases, it's a year of your life. You go through hell. You usually lose your hair. You go through multiple surgeries, radiation, chemotherapy, and then you can take a breath at the end of that 12-ish month span and say, okay, like I went through hell and I did so to save my life, and now I get to experience survivorship and move on. So she was keeping it together as best as she could because everything that she had seen around her surrounding young women with breast cancer ended up being a as happy of an ending as you could have in a situation that involves cancer.
When you're dealing with this, especially when you find out the news, are you drawing that conclusion immediately where like, oh crap, I'm gonna die? Or do you have the mindset of, oh no, I'll be fine? There's so many people that have it, or I think, especially on Long Island, we know of so many people that have gone through it where you just don't know anymore. Cancer is such a common thing where some people survive, some people don't survive. What is your initial thought when you go through this? Is it is this the end, or is this a long fight ahead of me?
I mean, as a mother with two young children, my kids were 5 and 3 at the time that I was diagnosed in 2019. Um, your very first thought goes to, oh my God, I'm going to leave my husband a widow and my children motherless. Um, but you know what? That's if I stub my toe and fall down and smash my face and go to the hospital, I would probably think, oh my God, there's a possibility I could leave my children motherless. So it's a tricky question when you have kids because your heart and your mind always goes to what happens if I leave my children. Um, so initially that was my thought. Oh my God, I'm gonna die. I've known people that died from breast cancer, and I didn't have much in terms of facts about it. I just knew the scary part. I knew that chemotherapy made you throw up and radiation made you burn and surgeries were scary. And that's what I had to look forward to. And I was going to be bald. And I, at the time didn't realize the amount of support that I had behind me. And what are my children going to say? It's like you just get smacked in the face over and over with all these different thoughts and emotions. It took some time for me to realize I can do this. I can beat this. I can give it my all. So what if I'm bald? You know what? I'm going to shave my head. I'm going to give myself a mohawk. I'm going to dye it pink. I'm going to make it like not so scary because you know what? I had kids that I didn't want to scare them. I knew what they were about to go through. Luckily, as a child, I never had both my parents. My mom had cancer much later in my 20s, my dad in my late teens, early 20s, and they were both stage 1, very easily handled. Never heard from again, thank God. I knew this was going to be different. I knew that I was going to have a double mastectomy. My breasts were going to be removed. I knew that I was going to become sterile, and the opportunity to give them another brother or sister was being taken away from me. I knew all of the stuff that was coming, and because of my children and for my children, I stood up and I fought. And even though at first I thought, "Oh my God, this cancer kills, and this is going to be it, and I'm not going to survive this," I said to myself, "No, you have to survive this for your kids."
When you found out they were 5 and 3, correct?
Yes.
So at what point did you inform them? How did you tell them? Was it one of those things where you numbed it down a little bit, where you just say, "Hey, mom is just a little sick right now"? How did you break it to those kids? Because especially the 5-year-old, because the 3-year-old, it takes a while for him to understand anything. I mean, he may not
Hmm.
even process it. But the 5-year-old, he's at that age where he's going to school. He knows that people have moms and dads. He knows that people can get sick,
Hmm.
but they may not know the extreme levels of being sick.
Yeah. I mean, so as a person, I'm an oversharer. That's just who I am. And as a person, my husband is an undershare. So we had our fair share of um, back and forth about how we were going to handle what we were going to tell the kids. And at the end, I said, you know what? The more they know, the less scared they are. We don't have to go into detail. We don't have to talk about surgeries. We don't have to talk about, you know, prognosis, curative, levels. We don't have to talk about anything like that, but I had to let them know what they were going to see, what they were to expect. And to be honest, I didn't know what I was going to see. I didn't know what I was going to expect. Cancer and chemotherapy and everything is depicted so poorly on television that you just think that, you're going to be in bed lying in your own vomit for 12 months, scarred and bruised and crying and miserable with no help. And that is the complete opposite of what it's really like. Yeah, it's scary and it sucks and you're miserable and you're in pain and things hurt and you are crying sometimes, but it's not as terrible as everything out there allows you to think it is. So I, as a researcher at heart, um, I went on and I found some really great videos for children to explain a parent that has cancer. And my favorite one was it was a Pac-Man, and the Pac-Man was going around and it eats the little dots, and the little dots are the cancer and the Pac-Man is the chemotherapy. So I would say to them, okay, so mommy has to have something called chemo, and it's medicine that goes in her body, and that's like this Pac-Man, and it eats these bad cancer cells. Chomp, chomp, chomp. It eats them, it eats them, it eats them. But the problem is that the Pac-Man can't see too well. So they don't know the difference between a cancer cell, a sick cell, and a healthy cell. And there are some healthy cells that look like cancer cells, like the cells in my belly, the cells in my mouth, the cells on my head. So I might have belly aches, or I might have pain in my mouth, or I might lose all my hair and I might be bald. How crazy would that be? And they were like, what? Mommies can't be bald. Only daddies can be bald. So, I tried to make it light, but also get across the fact that they were going to see some things that like isn't something that a normal 5 and 3-year-old see. Um, by the grace of God, my children were so receptive. They were so um like they kind of were like, okay, mom, whatever. But when push came to shove, and I did have to shave my hair, and I did have a pink party where I dyed it pink and had the mohawk, and then I finally had to shave it because it was coming out in clumps after starting chemotherapy. They were just like, oh my God, look, mom, your hair's falling out. That means you're getting better. And I was like, thank you, Jesus, because that is literally the only message I was trying to get through to them, is that I have to go through this. But if you see these scary things happening, just know it's because it's making mommy better.
That's the first time I ever heard of a perspective like that. And that actually is really powerful. That just hit me really hard. Where sometimes, like my mom went through cancer in 2021, and I just felt so bad because I remember she went through the chemo and she was just feeling lifeless and she just felt awful. But I think in reality, I think my brother, my sister, and I were more responsive mentally and emotionally to the chemo than my mom was.
Mm,
We felt so bad for her that she was even going through all this because, we love our mom and we think she's a wonderful person. But to think of it from that perspective, because we think this is just a punishment where for your kids to be like, hey, that means you're getting better.
yeah,
That just right now, like that just really hits me hard. And I love hearing that, and especially from their small kids.
yeah,
I personally believe someone told me this once, and I've really been trying to stay by this. The best advice to get is from older people and younger people,
mm-hmm.
kids and older people.
Because they will tell you the truth.
Yeah, and to hear something like that, like it really just makes it a lot more. I don't want to say positive, but a lot more. It's a mindset shift.
Yeah, yeah,
One of the things that really made me so admirable of you is how you've been able to have that positive mental attitude, because this hasn't been a quick battle.
no, no.
This has been a war that you've been
Yeah,
dealing with.
this was not quite that happy ending that my mom and I and everyone else who have been watching from the outside had hoped it would be. So it's like I said, just this time of year, I was diagnosed stage 2 on June 5th, 2019. I had a double mastectomy with lymph node dissection, which means they took 22 lymph nodes from the left side, my cancer side, which now every time I fly or do heavy activity, I have to wear a sleeve over my arm. Um, I started chemotherapy on August 5th, 2019, and completed it on August 12th. I'm sorry, November 12th. Then I had my breast reconstruction surgery on December 11th, and I started my first of 28 radiation treatments on New Year's Eve, December 31st, 2019. Um, on just, when was it? February 7th, I finished radiation, and I thought, yeah, 2020, it's going to be my year. Like, woo. and scene, like COVID came out. So the next step in my journey was that I was to have a total hysterectomy because after finding out that I had cancer, I completed a genetic panel which showed that I had the BRCA2 or BRCA2 mutation, meaning that I and other people with this mutation are at a significantly higher risk for a multitude of cancers. Now, it just doesn't affect women, it's men too. It was actually my dad who passed the gene down to me because BRCA puts you at a higher risk for breast, ovarian, melanoma, prostate, which I don't have to worry about, and pancreatic cancer. So all of those cancers are at a higher percentage of people who carry the gene mutation. And I was not at a time in my life where I was willing to take any risks. I already was made sterile from the chemotherapy, so I knew that my choice to have another child was taken from me. Um, so I said, basically, any body part that can get cancer that I don't require, you're going to take out of me. So that was scheduled for April 2020. But when COVID hit, the hospitals and the surgical spaces were required for surgeries that were necessary, not that were considered quote unquote elective. And since I had not yet shown that I had cancer in any of my reproductive organs, that surgery was pushed off till October.
With COVID going around, did you ever feel that I may not be able to get the treatment I need? Did that make you more scared, the fact that they weren't treating anybody? Because I
Yeah.
remember if you didn't have COVID, well, this might be exaggerating, but if you didn't have COVID, you were not a priority.
Yeah. Not even cancer patients were priorities. So luckily, I had finished, quote unquote, finished my treatment for cancer in February with my last radiation treatment. But I had to go on a medication that kind of works with your body to try and keep that cancer away. And this medication was in short supply. So I remember having to go to specialty pharmacies and talk to my doctor and talk to the pharmacy through the cancer center. So it certainly, affected me in that way, in addition to pushing off my surgery. But yeah, there were people who couldn't get treatment or they could, but then they were so terrified because chemotherapy treatment decreases your immune system astronomically that the risk of getting COVID was just heightened by, I don't know, 9 billion%. So going outside the house was something that was looked down upon. Now you have to go out of the house to have treatment to save your life, which could also potentially kill you because your immune system is so low. So it was like a catch 22 for anybody, not just cancer, but anybody who's going through any sort of immune suppressing treatment or has any immunosuppressant disease on top of everything else that's going on in the world. So I considered myself lucky actually because I had just skirted that line of having it during COVID and finishing right before.
There were people who had illnesses. There were people who had other things that were urgent. However, because COVID was the top of the list at the time, they just couldn't get treated. I had a cousin who had a stroke, and they couldn't treat him because the
Hmm.
hospitals were reserved for just COVID. We were very fortunate enough to where we were able to provide a in-home care occupational therapist
Yeah,
who was able to help them, but not everybody has that opportunity. Not everybody has that ability to do that.
right.
And yeah, at that point, do you feel like anything was fast forwarded during COVID? Did you lose any hope during that time? Did you feel like, oh crap, this COVID, like, is this what's going to take me out? Is this what's gonna?
I mean, I laugh because that summer when I knew I couldn't have my surgery, and the cancer that I had mentioned earlier that my mom had was endometrial. So that was cancer of the reproductive organs. So I thought, my body seems to love cancer. So, like, I really don't want to have something that's affected somebody in my bloodline. But I was like, watch, I fight this cancer and it's COVID that takes me out. Like, so I tried to like keep it light and whatever. But like, actually, yeah, I was scared because as it turned out, when I had my surgery in October, when they were opening up elective surgeries again, they found precancerous tissue in my uterus. So, had it been delayed any longer, or had they decided not to do the surgery, things could have been very different. Now, as it turned out, um, things are very different at this point. I had that surgery. I had a third breast reconstruction surgery in November. And then my doctor said, "Hey, everything looks great. How you feeling?" I said, "Awesome. No pain. No. No fevers. No. No sickness? No. Excellent. Let's send you for a PET scan because when you have early stage cancer, you usually go for a PET scan like every year at the beginning just to make sure that, everything's status quo. Send you for a PET scan. Everything will come out clear. You'll have a great Christmas and New Year's, and you can work on being a survivor. Great. Sounds like the perfect plan. December 16th, 2020 is a date that I will never, ever forget. I went to get the PET scan, stopped at Starbucks so that I could have it the second I got out because you're not allowed to eat or drink anything. I drank that disgusting liquid. I took pictures, selfies of myself in the chair drinking the liquid because from jump, I wanted to advocate about breast cancer and stuff. So that was just another selfie to go in on the wall in Instagram and let people know like this is what I'm doing to make sure I stay healthy. Um, because I felt fine. I felt great. I felt better than I had in 2 years. I was ready to be a survivor of cancer and figure out that part of the journey. Um, and I got home and I put on a Hallmark Christmas movie, which were my favorites. My kids were in preschool and kindergarten, and I had my Hallmark blanket, and I was sitting there, and I just kept opening the portal. Nothing yet, nothing yet, nothing yet, nothing yet, nothing yet. And then all of a sudden, the scan was posted on the portal, and again, I was alone because I expected nothing to come of this. I expected less to come of this scan than I did of that first mammogram and sonogram. And I remember opening the report and scanning down to the bottom because that's where like the meat and potatoes is. It basically tells you what all the mumbo jumbo that came before it means. And it said, highly suspicious of metastatic disease. And that is the last thing that I expected to see. That is the last thing that I wanted to see because when you have breast cancer and it becomes metastatic, it is not like a local recurrence that you can again beat. It's for life. It's terminal. It means you'll be in treatment forever. It means that you will not have a normal lifespan. Um, all in one felt swoop, I was going from singing Christmas songs and living in the fantasy of Hallmark Christmas movies, and then my life was ripped away from me. So again, I texted my husband this time because I knew he was at the gym, and I was like, "Hey, make it short. Come on home." And he called me. He's like, "What? I can't. I don't understand what's going on. Why do you need me to come home? I just got to the gym," and I didn't want to say anything, but I just broke down, and I was like, "It's back. It's back. The cancer's back. I'm gonna die. I'm gonna die." And he started crying, which is not him. And he's like, "What do you mean? What do you mean?" And I was like, "It's back. It's in my liver. My liver is covered in tumors. This is really bad. I need you to come home." And I mean, I swear to God, the gym is 15 minutes away. He probably got home in 5 minutes. I don't know how he did it, but he came home and he was like, "Explain this to me. Explain this to me." Because most people don't understand. Even people who have breast cancer or have loved ones who have breast cancer, they don't understand that you don't die from breast cancer. You die from metastatic breast cancer, which is stage 4, which means that the cancer moved from the original site to another place in your body. Um, and now that means that tumor cells will circulate in your bloodstream for the rest of your life and it's terminal. Uh, my doctor called, she confirmed the diagnosis. And I said, "You need to say the words out loud for Matt to hear because he's not believing what I'm saying." And she just said, "I'm so sorry, Matt. This is not the news any of us wanted or expected, but this is an incurable disease at this point." And we just sat there in silence. And I couldn't believe that I was being handed a life sentence and a death sentence at the same time. It was awful. But guess what? It was 3 o'clock and my son was getting off the bus in 30 minutes. And I was not about to ruin his Christmas. Ruin he wasn't 5 at the time. He was 6. He was 6. So I was not about to ruin a 6-year-old's Christmas and a 4-year-old's Christmas. So we fixed our face and moved on. And, we told our parents, and that sucked because they knew what it meant right away. And it ended there. As a person who's an oversharer, I didn't tell anyone. I didn't tell my friends. I didn't tell extended family. I, for the first time, was not ready to share this news because I couldn't process it. I needed to get through Christmas. I needed to get through the new year. I needed to do the things that I needed to do to make sure that my kids had the best holiday season because Christmas is our favorite time of year in the Perullo house. And we did. We had an amazing Christmas. Probably the best Christmas on record because those kids got, Santa really went crazy those last 9 days and they got everything that they could have asked for. Um, and on the 26th, I was making appointments and I was figuring out what I was going to do next. And then 2 days later, on the 28th, I woke up with 104 fever. And my left breast was swollen, double the size of the other one. So I called my plastic surgeon, I called my oncologist, and I was like, we have a serious problem. And it turned out that I had a life-threatening um, infection. They thought was sepsis. They thought it was MRSA. Ended up being a staph infection. But I was in the hospital for 4 days. So I was in the hospital for New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, which is the last thing that my heart or my soul or my brain needed because I was already at rock bottom. And I like, if it was possible to break the bottom of the barrel and go even lower, that's where I was. Um, I lost an implant. So I had one fake breast and one flat side, which was already adding to the body dysmorphia that I had from losing my breasts entirely. Um, they couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. I was stage 4. I was in a hospital. I wasn't allowed to have visitors because it was COVID. I was going into what I thought might be my very last ball drop. Um, and I didn't think that there was any coming up from there.
That is, I can only imagine what that whole holiday season must have been. When you're getting this information, do you just ask yourself, like, what did I do? Or did I do something wrong? Do you look back at all your life decisions? Do you start do you start pointing blame at yourself? I obviously it's not your fault, but it is one of those things where just trying to make sense of all this. Do you ever ask yourself, like, what the fuck happened? Like, why is this happening to me? I thought I was out of this battle, and
Mhm.
now I just got a life, like you said, a life sentence and a death sentence.
Yeah, I mean, so now I'm coming up on my 2.5 year stage 4 cancer anniversary. June 16th will be that date. And I still ask myself that question every day. I was never super religious. I grew up in a household where my mom went to church every Sunday and my dad was an atheist. So my brother and I were caught between two worlds where we didn't know which way was up. Um, since being diagnosed stage 4, I've found a lot of spirituality. So I've gotten to a place now where I know that I didn't do anything. But even, I mean, to be as transparent as possible, even last night, dealing with failing another medication, and I'll get into what that means in a minute, but failing another medication and not knowing what medication is coming next, I just broke down and I said to my husband, I don't know what I did to deserve this. I am kind, I work hard. My goal is to make other people happy. I compliment people on the street because I want to, not because I have to. I over tip at restaurants. I, always put positive comments into the suggestion box. I never drank too much. I never did drugs. I never stole. Like, I always lived by a certain just moral code that felt good to me. And for something like this, not just to have cancer and then have it come back and be a stage 4, and then have the stage 4 battle be impossible because the way that it works with stage 4 is you live as long as your body is responding to treatment. And there are a limited amount of treatment options for you dependent on the type of metastatic breast cancer you have. Um, so you could go on one line of treatment and it could last you 7 years, and then that treatment doesn't work anymore, and you go into the next one, and that lasts a couple of years. And that's how people are outliving the expectation of the 3 to 5 year life expectancy. I've been going through this battle for 2.5 years, and I've been through 7 medications already because nothing is working. So I said to my husband, not only did I have cancer, not only do I have stage 4 cancer, not only are the medications not working, I was like, I don't get it. And he's like, this is above your pay grade. You did not ask for this. You did not deserve this. You didn't do anything for this. you know, my therapist said to me, we wish all the bad people would get cancer and have sick children and go through these things that we struggle with every day. But that's just not life. There are some amazing, wonderful people who've passed away from terrible diseases or tragic incidents. And it's not because of anything they did, but it is a struggle to sometimes sit there when it's just bad news after bad news after bad news and say, come on, like I must have done something because this is no this is no way that a good person should ever have to live their life.
Hearing that story, it's so heartbreaking because I got a chance to know you over the past 2 years now, and I see you as a wonderful person, a wonderful mother, a wonderful wife, and I just can't make sense of anything.
Hmm.
Why certain things happen, why do certain things not happen, and I can't even. I don't even think I'm qualified to get into it as far as things happen for a reason or things don't
Yeah.
happen for a reason. I don't know. But when you're dealing with this, when you're in this mindset, are there certain people that you want to be around? Are there certain people you don't want to be around? Did you, I, like I said this before, I love your mindset. I love the way you look at things. I want to know, how does one look at life the way you look at it?
Um, it takes work, that's for sure. Um, when I was first diagnosed early stage and then again late stage breast cancer, I told myself that I would not be the person that sits there and cries about it and wants people to do for her and just rolls over until it's time to die. Like that was not going to be me. Um, but some days I want that person to be me, and sometimes that person is me. Sometimes I wake up and I get my kids on the bus, and I'm just like, no. And I cancel all my plans for that day, and I get back under the covers, and I eat ice cream from my bed, and I watch true crime documentaries. Like that's all my life is that day. Um, so it's not an everyday thing. It's the image I try to portray, but I also try to keep it very real. I don't post very much on Instagram anymore, but I did change my Instagram handle from one that was more about the wedding planning business to one that's more about my cancer journey, incredible and incurable. So I try to be as real and authentic as possible. I don't post as much because I hate to say it this way because this is not how I mean it, but like I don't care as much. Like I'm not posting for publicity, I'm not posting for attention, I'm not posting for likes, I'm not posting for follows, I'm not posting for anything other than um I want to keep people updated because I get a lot of questions on how I'm feeling. It's easier to do that in one shot. And I want people to see the positive side. So, like, how I am able to muster up feeling this way, but also the real side where, like, I just accidentally started a Deep Thoughts from the Bathtub series because I've been in so much back and stomach pain lately. Because the last medicine that failed me failed because they found 30 new tumors on my thoracic spine, as well as my liver metastases are getting worse, and my belly has some active cancer in it. So, it's led to a lot of pain. And I spend a large portion of my day in the shower, in the bathtub, taking pain medication to make it go away. And I just started posting on Instagram, like, okay, well, guys, I'm in the bathtub again. Like, if I ever thought I was going to put a video on social media of me in the bathtub, I did not think it was going to look like this. But here we are. Um, so I think that, whether I'm having a really bad day or I'm having a really good day, I try to find something that's not so terrible, and then I find myself joking about it all. Sometimes the jokes are pretty morbid. But it's also a very lonely disease because a lot of people don't understand it. So when you ask, who do I want to be around? Do I want to be around people? Do I want to be alone? It's like it literally varies by the minute. Like I might be talking to someone through text and just be like, I can't do this anymore and put my phone down and not answer them till the next day, which, sorry, everyone. I know that's happened to like so many people, but like, I just can't keep it up. Like, I have to put it away and be by myself. So it's different every second of every day. Do I want to be surrounded by people? Do I not want to be surrounded by people? I will say I just went on a cancer retreat through an organization called First Descents, and it's an outdoor adventure trip for people who are diagnosed with cancer young. Like AYA, adolescent and young adult cancer. So I went on this trip. I got chosen for it. I went to the Smoky Mountains in North Carolina for whitewater rafting and kayaking. And I met people who had different types of cancers, early stage, late stage, who are survivors, who haven't had cancer for over 5 years, whatever it may be. And it was nice to be surrounded by people who had or have cancer because we kind of know what to and not to say. I used to get very upset when people would say things to me like, "You're going to beat this," or like, "You're so strong and an inspiration and you're going to be fine." But now I realize that nobody knows what to say. What do you say to somebody who has a terminal illness? What do you say? "Sorry, your life sucks." Like that doesn't work either. So I can't get upset or mad with anybody because all they want to do is help me and take this away from me. But it was nice to have a week where we all just kind of looked at each other. Nobody gave each other pity looks. Nobody said, "You're so strong and you're the best and you're going to beat this." We were just like, "Man, I know how you feel. That sucks. And I'm here and I'll sit through the darkness with you." I actually had a day where I couldn't go out on the rapids because I was feeling so sick and I sat back and one of the girls that I met on this trip, she came back the second half of the day and just sat with me. We watched Forensic Files and ate popcorn and laughed. And that's what I needed. I didn't need, somebody to amp me up and tell me how amazing I was. I just needed someone to sit with me and to share a bag of popcorn with me and laugh with me and make me feel for 5 seconds like I wasn't dying.
That's what I actually wanted to really get into. The I had a friend who was clinically depressed, and unfortunately, they're no longer with us. But I remember at the time, and I hate saying this out loud because at the time I didn't know. I'm like, be happy,
Mm,
appreciate things that you have. Like life's not so like you have a pretty good life. You try to logically
yeah.
talk to them, thinking that they'll understand it, but it's such an emotional experience to go through. It's
Hmm.
such an emotional process that they don't want to hear those things. And eventually, they're just going to get diluted.
Yeah.
How many times have we seen online, "You are amazing, you're perfect just the way you are," and it's like, no, I
Yeah.
mean, whether you agree with it or not, that's not what we want to hear. When you're going through all this, are people? I'm guessing people aren't treating you the way you want them to treat you. Like, I feel like one of the things that I did with my mom was I know my mom has that immigrant story. She came here at 15. She worked several jobs. She
Hmm.
has that whole like she's got that like gritty Spanish woman mentality.
Yeah.
And I'm like, my mom's not gonna act like a victim.
Yeah. Like
Never
a sick person.
was she dealing with stuff? Yes. But was she still pushing through? Yes. She went to a wedding like in the middle of chemo, like during
Yeah.
COVID. Like that's how much like that's the type of
Yeah.
person she
I
is.
worked weddings 4 days after getting a chemo treatment in the middle of COVID.
I remember it
Yeah.
was like some people just have that drive, and that's what they want to do. They don't do it because they feel like they have to. It's just they're honoring their integrity. They're doing what they want. At this point, who were the types? What kind of people did you want to be around? I know you said you wanted to just watch true crimes and just like eat
Yeah.
popcorn, but
I mean, yes and no, because everybody is just out there doing their best. I'm out there doing my best trying to deal with this. Friends and family are out there doing their best trying to support me in the best way that they know how. Um, so I love them all and I do want to be around them. And I do appreciate when they say how strong I am and that I'm a warrior and that I am an inspiration because it does make me feel like I'm not doing this for nothing. It does make me feel that I am making a positive impact. It does make me feel that when I am tired, but I continue to advocate for organizations like Metaviver and for other metastatic breast cancer patients, um, that I'm doing it for a real and purposeful reason. So, don't get me wrong, like I certainly want to be around all these people, but sometimes being around anyone is just too much. Like imagine you're in a room and the radio is on and the TV is on and the kids are screaming and your tea kettle is going off and it's just so many different sounds and like it's almost like textures and you could feel the sound and you're like, like I just get me out of here for a second. Like sometimes just having a conversation with somebody can be like that because I may be looking at you and having a conversation with you, but in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, so am I going to be starting a clinical trial next week? What do my numbers look like? Where is the cancer right now? Is it spreading as we speak? Do I have a stomach ache? What's going on? Focus, focus. Yes, yes. Oh, thank you. I know that I'm so strong. And oh my God, I was crying for 6 hours yesterday and I couldn't get my act together. yes, thank you. Yeah, I definitely feel like a warrior. And it's like there's just so much happening at once that people on an everyday basis don't see, that it's like it's not that I don't want to be around them, it's just that like everyday life is sometimes too much.
Were there certain people you just stayed attached to? Now, obviously, I know you the first person you told when you heard the news was your husband and your
Mhm.
mom. But were there other people that you found comfort in? Were there certain people that you had this feeling of safety with? Where was it a therapist specifically? Was it a specific friend? Did you develop any friendships from this? Or did you feel that the people that you had in your circle prior to your diagnosis, did you feel you needed a different group or different peer group?
I have three best friends, really four best friends from high school. The three of them, we go by the nickname Jams because it's Jackie, Adina, Megan, and Steph. So that is like my core group. I also have a very, very, like, very close best friend, Dana, who always makes me feel loved and supported. I have friends from my past who now are mothers of children of the same age as my children. Those friends, Marie and Dana, and there's this woman, Kristen, who like runs so many fundraisers for me and gets people involved. And I mean, to list off the names would be ridiculous because I would be here all day. But like my Island Trees community, all of the moms and dads in that community always have my back. They're always running fundraisers. They're always checking on me. They're always taking the boys places. I mean, since I've been diagnosed, every year, whether it's on Metastatic Breast Cancer Day or sometime in the month of October, they all make shirts that all of their kids wear, and they come to my house and they take pictures of my kids with their kids. And people have sent like superheroes to my house. And these are the people that I cling to, because these are the people that are not saying, hey, don't hesitate to let me know what you need, or hey, what can I do for you? Now the burden's back on me, and I'm not going to ask for help because why, I don't feel comfortable doing that. But these are the people that said, "Hey, are you home on Tuesday? Yeah. And do your kids eat pizza? Yeah, great. A pizza's being delivered. Tip and everything is covered for you." Or, what's Lorenzo's favorite superhero? Spider-Man? Okay, on Saturday at 2 o'clock, be ready for a surprise visit at the door. So it's the people that are taking the initiative to do things that make a serious impact in my life and my children's life. Not like, hey, whatever you need, and then I don't hear from them for 6 months, because it's like, I appreciate you, but like, I'm never going to ask you. I'm never going to ask anyone for anything. Um, I also do have a therapist that I speak to every single week. She and I were working together way before I was diagnosed with cancer, and then life got in the way, and we kind of slipped apart. And then right before I was diagnosed with breast cancer, I started seeing her again, and I haven't stopped. Um, Thank God for her. Thank God for therapy, the whole concept. I mean, she's like one of the few people that I feel comfortable like really crying in front of. She lets me go to the dark places, but then pulls me back and reminds me, of what I have versus, and facts versus, my anxieties and what it's telling me. Um, I know I could not get through this without the support of the therapist. And then, yeah, I mean, my parents, my husband, my brother, my kids, they're my core, they're my rock, but at the same time, they're going through this too. So there are some things that I just can't put on them because, for my mother, I was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2019. She was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2021. My dad had open heart surgery at the end of last year. So she's been put through the ringer. So for me to go to her doesn't feel right because she's already over the limit. So it's nice to have my girls, like my jams girls and the moms from the community, and my hockey moms and hockey dads. My older son plays hockey. I mean, it just seems like every community that I step foot into, everybody's there with loving arms. And it sucks to be that person who gets the fundraisers for them and gets the baskets and gets the meals. I wish I could just go back to being me, the person who nobody really knew. And I had my own small business and I was living my life and I never got money from people or gifts from people or cards from people. All those things are needed and necessary and they help us get by. Um, I just wish that I could just make it all go away and I could just be me again.
When you're going through your battle, what I felt, and I could be wrong, but I feel like there are sometimes, you're going through your own battle. and I can only imagine what you're dealing with. I remember you were saying that one of the things that you're not a huge fan of is if someone says, "Hey, let me know what I can do for you," where it's like, now I got to make a decision. I don't want to be the burden, which gives me a perspective. I'm like, okay, I get that now
Yeah.
because whenever even though I want somebody, I don't want to ask for
Right.
help. And I think a lot of people are like that. I think people want to be loved, but people feel like if they ask for it verbally or
Hmm.
just by anything else, they feel like they're being a burden. They feel like they're bothering the person. So people just take the initiative to make the decision. Uh, I'm not sure if you ever see these jokes online, but whenever like a guy asks a woman, like, "What do you want to eat for dinner?" She's like, "I don't know."
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah.
just make a decision,
Yeah.
and then they just don't want to make that decision.
Yeah.
So, are there certain? I know we were talking about certain people you want to be around. Did you feel that the stress of your family or any loved one or anyone else was making you just uncomfortable? Do you feel that someone's reaction to you having cancer just made it worse? Do
Hmm.
you, because there's a part of me, and I guess this is where I was talking about with my mom. I remember I always wanted to bust my mom's chops
Yeah.
during all of this. I loved to joke with my parents.
Hmm.
I remember my dad had a health scare a few years ago, and I always loved to joke around with my dad about money. I'm like, Dad, like, really, you have to be in the hospital. You know how expensive this bill's gonna be, right? Like I like to crack jokes like that just
Hmm.
to lighten the mood,
Yep.
but
Hmm.
also bring some normalcy.
Yeah.
Because based on what I know about you, you don't want to be labeled as a victim.
Yeah.
You are thriving. You are pushing forward. I'm not going to be here and be like, you're amazing, you're so strong, but you're constantly moving forward. It's not like you're stopping here and you're
Right.
like, boo hoo me, boo me. You've been working, you've been active, you've had, like, there's life to you still. Like,
Hmm.
you're not taking this, like, you're fighting this.
Right.
So tell me, there's not even a real question to this, but what are you thinking when I'm talking about all this stuff?
Um, so it is funny, like, sometimes I find that it's my diagnosis, but I'm the one who's consoling people. So when I see people who I haven't seen in a while, they'll come over and they'll hug me and they'll start to cry. And I'm always like, and I get it. I get it and I appreciate it. It's because they love me and they care for me so much that the thought of me having to go through all of this is devastating. Um, and that's fine. Like I'm happy to be there for them, but sometimes it's really hard because it's like, wait, who's the sick one here? Like who's the one going to treatment? Who's the one who's, life is going to be yanked away from them at a horrible opportune time. Like, you know, if it happened once or twice, it would be one thing, but I mean, it happens, I'd say like 2 to 3 times a week that I'm consoling someone else based off of their reaction of my disease. So I could tell you that certainly doesn't help. So trying to keep your emotions in check and then crying later is definitely something that would help somebody in my situation. Um, you know, but again, there's so much anger and so much sadness around this disease that it's only like outshadowed by the amount of love that I receive from so many people. I mean, people on Instagram that I don't even know are like, oh my God, my sister had this, my mother had this, my so and so had this type of cancer, that type of cancer. And now, because of what you said, I know how to better help them. I know how to better speak to them. And those are the things that keep me going. And those are the things that feel good because, like I said, I'm not on social media for publicity. I'm on social media for this reason, to know that I've been handed the shittiest card in the deck. It's like, getting a two when you're playing war and, your kid gets an ace constantly and he's pulling from the bottom of the deck every time because he's got an ace every single round. But that's kind of like what this feels like. Like I could pull a two or I could pull a king. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because it's still the shittier hand.
Based on what you're just saying about with war, when you look at other people and they fight cancer and sometimes they come out on top or they survive, do you look at them differently? Do you look at them and it's like, why did you do? Like, why did you make it?
Yeah.
Do you look at? Are you
Yeah, you could
jealous?
say the word jealous because it took me a long time to say the word jealous. It took a lot of therapy. It took a lot of talking sessions for me to be able to say the words, hell yeah, I'm jealous of people who beat cancer and it doesn't come back. Hell yeah, I'm jealous of people who, um, have diseases that they're going to survive. Hell yeah, I'm jealous of people who are going through a divorce because that's horrible and that's sad, but you're not going to die from it. Um, it's a really shitty way to feel. It's not a choice. Um, because in the same respect that I'm jealous of somebody, I'm also so unbelievably happy that they don't have to go through what I'm going through. Their families don't have to go through what my family is going through. So, I feel like with everything I talk about related with this disease, everything is a catch 22. Everything has two sides or more to it. So it's like, yeah, I'm jealous as hell. Like, I wish I could wake up tomorrow and they could be like, oh my God, we were just kidding. Like, you survived, you're fine. And I could go on and live the next however many years. But um, that's never going to be the case for me. And it sucks and I hate it. And I look into my children's faces and I'm like, how the hell am I going to leave these kids without a mother? Like, what are they going to do if I die when they're in grade school? Are they going to go sit in the guidance counselor's office while the other kids make Mother's Day projects? Like it's just awful. So for me to say I'm jealous feels bad, but it's the absolute truth. And anybody who would say that they're in my shoes and they are not jealous is just either lying or they're just not at a point in their mental state or capability that they can say um, that they're jealous. And it's not that I don't want to be around people who have beat it and are considered survivors, because the sad truth about metastatic breast cancer is that so 1 in 8 women will be diagnosed with breast cancer at some point in their life. And out of those 8, you have 1 in 3 that will come back as stage 4. So, like, for example, my aunt was diagnosed with breast cancer 25 years ago and it just came back. Now, hers came back as a local recurrence. It's not metastatic, but it came back. So, that's the scary thing, too, is that you might think you have it beat, but that's cancer can rear its ugly head and come back at any time. So, there's a certain relief, I guess, that mine came back and I'm already in that spot. So I don't have to live in a world where every pain scares me that cancer is going to come back. I'm certainly not jealous of that, because that's a horrible way for cancer survivors to have to live. And I know many, if not all of them, do live that way. Um, but it is hard being the stage 4 cancer patient in a room with early stage cancer patients because you're all of those people's biggest fear, worst nightmare. Um, and you don't feel like you belong. So I've been in a lot of situations where it's not that I don't want to be around those people, but I don't feel like I belong in their company.
What has given you the best feelings now? I mean, you have a battle, a lifelong battle right now. But what are the things right now that just make you feel so alive? What are the things that really just make you feel so great right now?
Well, doing this trip with First Descents was definitely awesome because I have this like crazy fear of water. Um, quick fun story. So when I was younger, I went to Six Flags with my family and my dad can't swim. And we were in one of those two-person boats on a ride that you would be like, out of any ride at Splish Splash, like there's no way you could drown on the lazy river. But somehow like people bumped into our boat and my dad and I were messing around and the boat flipped over and my dad's foot got stuck and no lifeguard was looking at us and we almost drowned in the lazy river. So I have this insane fear of being upside down in water. Um, and in order to qualify to whitewater raft and kayak, you need to be able to be strapped into your kayak with your spray skirt, have your boat intentionally flipped over so that you can pull yourself out of the boat and not drown. So to go on this trip knowing that I would have to like literally face my fear and then do it and then accidentally flip your boat over and being forced to put that training to action and have to save your own life like less than an hour later. Um, that was something that scared me, but it brought me joy. Um, being around my kids when they're not driving me crazy brings me a lot of joy. Watching them play sports because they love it and they exceed at it, and it's just so much fun. But I will say that I am at a point now where I've pretty much forgotten who Adina Perullo is. back in the day, it was, who is Adina Perullo? Well, she's a wife, she's a mom, she's a police wife, she's a daughter, she's a friend. She loves to plan weddings, and that's pretty much it. And now I don't have the wedding planning thing. I had to step away because um, I never expected less than 150% service level for any of my clients. And when I got sick and I realized that I couldn't promise that, I knew that it was better for me to step away on my own terms than to ever disappoint anyone on the big day of their lives. So I lost that aspect. And now my whole life revolves around my kids, my husband, and my cancer. And if you ask me who I am, I can't even answer that question because I'm still trying to figure that out.
In a world, I like the perspective of this stuff because I mean, you have children, you have loved ones, you've been helping people. I feel like you've been living life, even though you haven't been dealt the best hand, you've been living life a way that I think most people want to,
Hmm.
where you're able to face your fears, which, by the way, I didn't know. I always wanted to go whitewater rafting, but
Yeah.
that's the test. I don't, I mean,
Yeah,
that,
it was
that
pretty
sounds
scary.
awful.
Yeah, it was pretty terrible. Yeah.
I'm going to Italy in the summer, and
Okay.
right next to Italy, where I'm staying, is a country called Slovenia. In Slovenia, there's this whole village of just outdoor activities,
Okay.
dedicated to outdoor activities. I want to go whitewater rafting, but if that's the test for it, I'm like, oh, I mean,
Yeah.
I'll still
Well,
do
if you
it.
do the raft and not the kayak, you may be okay. But
I,
if you do the kayak, it's required.
listen, after what you just told me, it's like
Come on, you can do it.
one of the things that I love hearing from you is like, okay, like you've pushed through so much and you work when you're dealing with all this. I remember specifically we had a wedding together
Hmm.
in 2022, early. And I remember you were telling me that there was a guest that came up to you and said, hey, listen, I can. They were asking for a favor and they used the cancer card to see if they can get that favor.
Hmm.
I forgot what you had said in response, but
Yeah.
I remember for you, you kind of thought that was like a cheap shot, like a cheap
Yeah.
card.
Yeah. It wasn't like, hey, I just got through chemo. Can I get a seat? It was like, hey, like, can I get an extra dessert? I have cancer. And I was kind of like, cool. Like, I also have cancer, stage 4. And they were like, oh my God. I was like, but I'll work on getting you that extra cupcake. It was just kind of like, you know, I, I, I can't say I haven't pulled the cancer card because there have been situations where I have. Um, but I don't feel like it's an entitlement or a right or something that you could be like, I want something, so this is how I'm going to get it. I'm going to make people feel bad for me. Um, but yeah, I remember that moment pretty clearly because not only was it that, but it was also torrential
Downpour.
downpouring at a beautiful, wonderful southern plantation for the most wonderful bride and groom. Um, so that whole day was crazy, fun, amazing, beautiful, exciting. But it's funny how that moment sticks out in my head too.
Yeah, because you remind me so much of my mom.
Yeah.
Where even I don't know if Italians and Spanish people. You're Italian, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know if Italians and Spanish people are just so similar, but there was just resilience where you just push through, and I think
Hmm.
that's what I guess I admire most about you. And I don't want to be the person that's like, oh, you're so strong, you're
Yeah,
so
yeah,
independent,
yeah.
but it's really cool to see, hey, you can have all these obstacles, you can have all these things that will interfere with your life, but you don't have to let that stop you.
Right.
That's been the biggest lesson that you've been able to teach me is just because you get a dose of bad news doesn't mean life is over. You have lived, like you are living a life. Like
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are not. I think a lot of people look at themselves and it's like, hey, I don't have this, I don't
Hmm.
have that, and they slow down, they stop. There's this. It was a Russian proverb. I don't know the Russian term for it, but the translation is a shark that stops swimming drowns. And I feel like you just have been swimming this entire process. Yes, once in a while you have a cry day, or you know, you look at yourself and you're like, crap, like what the hell's happening?
Yeah.
But everything I know about you, you've always just been someone that just goes forward.
Yeah. Well, first of all, that is a huge compliment for you to compare me to your mother. So thank you. Um, you know, Before cancer, I was the type of person who lived for the next big thing. So it was, I met my husband 20 years ago this past March, which is crazy. And it was like, our next date, the next time I saw him, graduation from college, getting engaged, planning our wedding day, trying to have kids, having kids. It was like the next big thing was so exciting. But that's because, like the majority of the people in the world who I am jealous that they are able to continue this mentality, is that I was blissfully ignorant at the fact that life is not forever. It's actually way shorter than any of us can imagine. In some cases, even shorter than that. So, like you say about perspective, I've become more and more resilient with more and more obstacles that have been thrown my way. I feel like I wouldn't have this perspective if I hadn't been sick. um, I probably would still just be coasting and complaining that the weather is bad and whatever. Whereas now I'm like, oh my God, this thunderstorm sounds so pretty. Or like, I've gotten to a point with my kids where I used to say to them, out our side window, we have a park across the street and we get the most perfect sunsets. And I would always say, guys, look at the sunset. It's so pretty. Like that's mommy's favorite sky. It's a cotton candy sky. Look at all the pinks and the reds and the blues, and I love it. Let's go outside. Let's take pictures in front of it. And now my boys will go, Mom, look at the sun. We have to go outside and take a picture. So it's like I'm seeing that the things that I'm saying and the appreciation for everyday life is being passed on to my boys. So that kind of like is something that keeps me going and makes me feel good, and yes, I feel like even though my wedding career was only what was it, 2014 to 2022, so almost 10 years, which in this business could be considered a really long time or a really short time. um, but I impacted hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people's lives doing what I did. I left corporate America to do that. I took a leap of faith. um, I took a pay cut. I took a lot of risks to do that. But the impact that it made on my life and the impact that it made on so many other people's lives, clients and vendors alike, just filled my cup more than any horrible, miserable corporate job that paid all the money in the world could have done. So at the end of the day, whether I lay my head down on the pillow for the last time tomorrow or in 5 years or 10 years, um, I'm really happy that I can look back on a life where I took risks before I knew I had to, where I impacted other people's lives in a positive way, and where I'm taking life lessons that are really meaningful and teach you to slow down and appreciate life, and seeing my kids bring them back to me, knowing that they've fully grasped them. So I think that it's cliche, but they say it's not about the amount of years in the life, but amount of life in the years. And I'm 39. I would love to see my 50th birthday, 60th. My 3 and my 9 candle from this past weekend for my birthday. My son goes, "Look, Mom, 93." I said, "Okay, save that for my 93rd birthday." And I know that that's kind of like a pipe dream, but I feel like if there's one piece of advice that I can embark on people who are or are not sick, is that you just never know. I mean, and I was complaining about getting pulled over by a cop in St. James, and the next thing I knew, um, I had cancer, and my life never turned itself around. So, um, slow down on the road. Stop yelling at people at red lights. Like if you see a sunrise, like stop and take it. Take the scenic route sometimes. Don't rush to get from point A to point B. Don't wait for the next big thing, because you're in the next big thing. You're in it. Doesn't matter what you're doing, you're in it, because the next make big thing might not be a good thing.
That's beautiful. What is next for you? What are the things you're focusing on? Um, I know we've talked a lot about mindset through here, but what are you doing other than therapy that is just keeping that maintenance of the mindset? Like, what are you doing to maintain? What are your goals for the future? I know these are kind of two different questions, but I feel
Yeah.
like they could go hand in hand.
So the biggest thing is that I'm trying to figure out, like I said, what brings me joy. Joy that I don't get out of obligation. So, like watching my sons play sports, like there is an obligation there to bring them to the sports and to get them to the practices and to do all that. And again, it's their joy that comes to me. I'm trying to find what brings me joy. So, when I was on this trip last week, we were painting. I was doing watercolors and I was doing different things, and so I'm kind of like in this, um, exploration period where I'm trying to figure out, like, I don't know, like, what is it that I like to do? What is it that I enjoy? I've always enjoyed writing. So I've done a couple of blogs over the last couple of years. I've written some articles for wellness journals online. That always seems to make me really happy. I have a very, very small stack of poems that I've written since the beginning of this breast cancer journey. That one day I always said I'd like to see transform into a book, but even if it's just a bunch of pages printed from Microsoft Word and stapled together, just so my kids have something tangible to look at as the years go by. I love adding to that. Right now, on the medical front, I am in between medications. So the medicine that I started in February, which was my seventh line of treatment, lasted me 3 months. I just found out that it did fail me because tumors are growing and spreading. But in those 3 months, it did a lot of good. So I'm hoping that a clinical trial is what's next for me. I'll find out tomorrow. If not, we're just going to continue with standard of care, go on to the next medication that's available. But the medications that are available for me with standard of care are less than fingers I have on one hand. So, clinical trial is really important. And with that segue, the other thing that really brings me a lot of joy and makes me feel like, even though I've been handed a shitty hand, I can make it purposeful, is that I do a lot of advocating for an organization called Metaviver. Um, Metaviver is the only not-for-profit organization that donates 100% of funds donated to breast cancer research. So they have research grants every year that doctors look at, and patients are allowed to be on the board. They have to do some paperwork and certifications, but they can look at the grants that have been applied for, or look at the research that's been applied for grant, and see if they think that that research is worthy of getting the different grants. There's a campaign called Light Up MBC, which is held on World Metastatic Breast Cancer Day, which is October 13th. And we're trying to get landmarks around the world to light up in pink, teal, and green, which are the colors for metastatic breast cancer, which
I tried to make
I
it
was going to
pink.
say,
I tried to make it teal,
I see it in your office.
and behind you it's a little bit teal. I
Yep.
tried to. I'm like,
No, it's perfect.
what's
It's
the other colors?
perfect.
Pink,
Pink,
green,
teal, and
teal,
green.
teal,
Yep.
green, and
And pink. So
isn't
pink.
teal and green the same color?
Not really. So like a lot of people say like blue, green,
Okay.
and pink, but so pink is because it originated in the breast, and breast cancer, as we all know, which is story for another day too, but there's pink ribbons everywhere, and they don't always mean the best things, and they don't always have the money that goes to the right places. But pink is for breast cancer. Green, I believe, is for life over death, spring over winter, and blue is for spirituality. So um, you know, I just want to get the word out there to people that metastatic breast cancer, if you have breast cancer, you have a chance of getting metastatic breast cancer. You don't die from breast cancer unless there's like something random that happens, like some sort of infection or something. But if that happens, it's the infection that you die from, not the disease. But metastatic breast cancer has a 100% rate of death, and only 2 to 5% of all funds generally raised for breast cancer goes to metastatic breast cancer. So I just don't understand, if you look at it from a logistical standpoint, if you look at it from a mathematical standpoint, um, how 100% risk of death for having metastatic breast cancer, but only 2 to 5% of funds go to that. Like, if you can cure or find more medications for metastatic breast cancer, you don't have to worry about it going to stage 4, because you know that you're okay and it's being handled and that there's medicines there for you. So being a part of that group and really spreading the news about metastatic breast cancer and how you can help has made me feel really good. I've done a lot of speaking events. I've spoken to a lot of people on the news about metastatic breast cancer. So just getting the word out there that, there's a lot of us. You might not hear of anybody who has metastatic breast cancer or metastatic disease with other cancers, but we're here. Metastatic breast cancer kills 116 men and women every single day, over 40,000 people a year. And one of those years, I'll be in that group. So while I'm here, you'll be damned that I'm going to let people know that we're here and we don't deserve to be pushed in a corner, and we deserve as much funding as everybody else.
Now, one of the things that I always was thinking about after our first meeting was there's breast cancer and there's metastatic breast
Hmm.
cancer. Do you think I know now with the colors and the ribbon colors, there's a nice difference now, but do you think there's so much focus on the breast cancer where the metastatic just gets ignored?
Yeah, Absolutely. So the big thing is that, everybody wants more money towards the awareness of breast cancer, preventative measures, mammogram and sonogram. I mean, you can't go into a mall now without there being a pure mammography, which is wonderful and amazing. Like they are getting women, underprivileged women, women who don't have insurance, women who are too busy, quote unquote, with their regular lives to check in on their own health. And they're getting them in to the mammogram rooms to check and make sure that they're okay. And in some cases, these women are not okay, but because the cancer was caught early enough, they're able to do more things to make sure that it doesn't come back. Doesn't guarantee it won't come back. Stage 0 breast cancer can come back as stage 4. Um, but the awareness and the preventative measures soak up so much of the attention that it's almost like, oh, stage 4, these people are too far gone anyway. So, like, we're going to focus on keeping people from going stage 4. Well, guess what? I was proactive. I was very aware of breast cancer. I did self exams every month. I did the strongest chemotherapy I could do. I did the most aggressive surgeries I could do. I did extra booster sessions in my radiation. I kept up with my doctor. I had monthly blood work, and the cancer still came back. I'm on top of every new medication. I research clinical trials. I research new medications, and it hasn't stopped my body from telling this medication, nope, cancer's too strong. You're out, you're out, you're out. So, sometimes it's more than awareness. Sometimes it's more than prevention. If it was just awareness and prevention, I would not be in this seat right now. So yeah, I feel like, it's like the ugly stepchild of breast cancer that nobody wants to think of. Because who wants to think of a disease that has like a 93% cure rate if you catch it early being fatal? Nobody. Nobody wants to think that way. I've heard people say at least you got the good cancer. First of all, there's no such thing as good cancer. And second of all, yeah, well, that good cancer flipped on its heel and now it's the worst kind of cancer you could probably imagine. So I just think people need to be better educated, understand what it means, understand what the difference is, and understand that there are organizations out there that really are taking 100% of funds and putting it right where it needs to go to give more medications to people living with it, with the hope that one day something could lead to a cure.
So tell me, like, what are all the resources that one can go to whether support, to look up more information? Is there, I know you've mentioned a few of them, but can you just list them all again, just so we have like this little section?
Sure. So, metaviver.org, it's like metastatic and survivor put together, metaviver.org. Within Metaviver, they do a stampede on the Capitol to get attention for stage 4 cancer into the hands of people who can really make a difference. They do Light Up NBC, which brings awareness with the 3 colors, the teal, the blue, and the pink. I mean, the teal, the green, and the pink. Um, and then they have the grants that go to research to create more medications. The larger companies like Susan B. Komen, Rethink Breast Cancer, there is Living Beyond Breast Cancer. These organizations have now shifted their focus a little bit where they were mainly focused on the awareness and the prevention. They now are focusing a little bit more closely on the metastatic side. So they're all great. And if you want, I can give you something to post with the podcast with the list of the links so that people can, when they click on it, they can easily click and find them because there's so many, but the truth behind chemo brain is that it's real. And I can't remember all of the different links, but I'll definitely provide them to you.
I have one last question before we wrap up.
Mhm.
There's a lot of people in my life I care about who are between the ages of 17 to 27, 30, 35. Pretty much there's a lot of women in my life who I care about.
Yeah.
What advice would you have for somebody who's in that early stage? Because I know like in the 40s they talk about getting tested.
Mm.
But what about someone who's younger? Do you tell them to get tested earlier? Do you tell them to live life a little bit differently? Do you tell them to make different types of choices? What advice would you have if you had a daughter who was late teens, early 20s, late 20s, early 30s?
The first thing I would say is if you have breast cancer in your family, find out if the person, don't even want to say woman because it could be man, the person who had the breast cancer, find out if they have a genetic mutation, because that can get passed through the bloodline. And you are not allowed to check if you have it unless you have a direct bloodline family member who has a genetic mutation. So just go and ask that person, like, hey, were you ever, has a genetic panel ever been done on you? Have you ever checked for, different things? Because it's not just BRCA. There's so many different gene mutations that can lead to a higher occurrence of breast cancer, but also, like I said, melanoma, prostate, pancreas. There's other gene mutations that can lead to brain cancers, et cetera. So don't be afraid to ask the person who is or was sick for more information if it's something that you can look into and make sure that you're okay. The second thing I would say is no matter what age, just make sure you understand your body. You have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. So, like telling you to go in the shower and to grab your breasts or, to grab, your testicles and to do all these things that, for a 17-year-old, they might be like, oh my God, mom, like, what are you saying? That's so weird. But like, nobody is going to know your body like you know your body. Like for me, I had multiple cysts and lumps in my breasts, but this one felt different to me because I was uncomfortably comfortable with what my body felt like and what felt normal and what didn't. So you're never too early to just see what feels good and what doesn't, but also to take note of how do I feel after I eat certain things? How do I feel? Have I been feeling sick for a couple of days? Really just try to trust your gut and fine tune your intuition with your own body. And I guess the third thing would be um, don't just let the government and Congress and your doctors tell you that you are too young to have a disease because you're not. I know 21-year-olds with breast cancer. So right now the limit or the age requirement for a mammogram is, I believe, 40. I think they're working to push it down to 35. But like, if it was 40 or 35, like, guess what? I'm 39, so like, I'm still not technically required to get a mammogram. Um, so if you feel like something is up, do not be afraid to push. You're your own best advocate. Nobody's going to stand up for you against world-renowned doctors and everything other than yourself. Um, you know, there's really something to be said about gut feelings, and you just have to trust them. So just because something says you're not eligible yet, you're too young, this is not your age group, you're not the population who gets this disease, this is very uncommon, don't just take that at face value. You have to really push and go with what your gut is telling you.
It's been such an honor to catch up with you again, and it's always good to hear from you. I'm not going to be the first to say you're amazing, but however, I think you
But
having you in my life has made my life better and has made me look at things a lot more in a brighter perspective. And it
thank
is
you.
always good to chat with you. I
Always.
appreciate hearing your story here. I appreciate you just taking the time. How can one find you? How can one reach out to you if they have questions or if they want somebody who because you seem like somebody you seem like a rock even
Yeah.
though you're the one that's going through the battle, you seem like that you could be a rock for people,
Yeah.
or a source of inspiration, or a source that people can lean on. How can someone find you?
I guess the best way would be Instagram because even though I don't post all the time, I am on it all the time scrolling. And the Instagram handle is incredible underscore and underscore incurable.
This part bothers me because I have to say goodbye, but thank you, Adina,
It's
for
not
coming
goodbye, it's
by.
see you later.
See you later.
See you later.
But thank you so much.
Thank you.